Hello, my friends. Welcome to We the Game Changers. I'm your host, Beth Knox, and today we are talking with Seattle City Attorney Attorney Davison. Ann has roots in the Pacific Northwest and spent over 5 years in the front office of the Seattle SuperSonics. She was later motivated to get her law degree, which then took her career on a journey that ultimately landed her in politics. She has been quietly and consistently changing the game ever since. I know you're going to enjoy my conversation with Ann. Thanks for joining us for We the Game Changers. Hi, Ann.
Hello.
It's so great to have you here.
It's fantastic to be here.
So, Ann, okay, tell me, let's start from the beginning. Where did you grow up in the Northwest, or did you come to the Northwest?
I also grew up here, but I came here. I came here as a young adult, so I feel like I did the second half of growing up here. Yeah.
Then you got your law degree, and you taught, right? You taught it.
I've done a variety of teaching. I taught in Thailand. I taught English.
Okay.
And after my time in D.C., and then I also, as a lawyer, I did a stint of teaching through the UW's Foster School of Business. They have a certificate program in the Continuum College for non-native English speakers. So I taught international law to non-lawyer students.
Oh, that must have been interesting.
It's a complicated topic for just a short time, but it's mainly to say don't use the internet, right?
So that's fascinating, because I was thinking on the way here that I have always wished I had gotten my law degree. It's just been one of those secret little things
still
that
can.
I know, right? I could.
Even if you don't practice law, it's very useful to have a law degree living in America. That's a sad state, in my opinion, because all of us lawyers have made it complicated to live here on a variety of topics. And so that's one of the things I like to focus on in my position now, is to make it more accessible and not something that seems so complicated and that the everyday person can't access. I kind of take that to heart, because it is difficult.
It is, and I mean, how often do we see something with a lot of legalese and our eyes roll back in our head, right? It's so complicated to understand, but I'm going to have to look into one of those classes for non-lawyers.
That's right. I think it should be more easy to understand.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I really am encouraging people to go to law school, particularly looking at being involved in the criminal justice system, whether it's as a prosecutor or as a defense position, or even as a judge, because we do need people to serve in those occupations. And so I take that really to heart in recruiting people now too.
Well, and to your point, to be knowledgeable in that from a legal perspective, so you can make smart business decisions. I think that's really, really smart. So, okay, you started off at the Sonics. So tell us a little bit about your time there. That must have been an incredible experience back in those days.
It really was unbelievable, and it's sad that I'm not a basketball knowledgeable person. So, but I think that's what made me do my role really well, because I wasn't in awe of the people around me. I just knew what tasks I needed to do to support those that were then going out on the floor to compete. And so very behind the scenes, so that didn't get me off track about who somebody was. Sometimes I had to look up in the media guide. Oh, they don't have on their jersey. I don't know what number they are, so I don't know who they are. But then they became regular people, right? But I was in the practice facility working in basketball operations, so it was really a very unique time, a very unique job. It just, it still was business. It just sometimes we closed at 4 to go to a basketball game. So it was unusual.
Right. A little unusual.
But I really enjoyed the cyclical nature of the preparing and the training camp and the preseason, and then the regular season, and then the going through playoffs, and then the draft, and then kind of a down cycle, and then doing it again.
Right.
And I kind of discovered that I liked that pace of work instead of just the constant without a real goal in mind. And that was a really introspective part for myself to know. I didn't know that about myself prior, even as an athlete playing. And so that was a very interesting thing that I take now into what I do.
That's interesting, because I find myself telling not only my own sons, who are in their late 20s now, and as well as interns, to pay attention to the things that you discover about yourself through your jobs. You don't have to love your job. It's great if you do, but what are you taking away from it about yourself, that awareness that informs your future career?
Well, and to actually pause and acknowledge that at least here in America, I feel like for a lot of people, we have the privilege of connecting purpose with profession, and really most of the world doesn't have that type of a situation. A lot of people are particularly just working to take care of themselves and their family. So when we are in a place where we can do introspective work through our work, introspective self-work through our work, I think it's our responsibility to do so.
Yeah. No, that's really a good point. We're going to come back to the Sonics
Yes.
a little bit, but now you...
As in bringing them back, or coming back to the topic?
Both.
Yes.
Both. So, but you also ran your own business. You had your own practice. How did you come about doing that, and what were your takeaways from that chapter in your career?
I really never had that as a goal. I never thought that's something I would do. But coming out of law school, again, I had worked in professional sports for 10 years prior to that. I'd worked on the sports representation side, which led me to the connection here with the SuperSonics with Wally Walker. And so having that 10-year time period in that industry, a lot of people, would give their left arm just to intern for free to have access to it. So I had a lot of relationships that people trusted me, again, because I wasn't in there to know people or be somebody, whatever. I just was in that space, and I was a trusted person that for them. So it really made the most sense to start my own practice than to go into a niche area that I'd be focused on only one exclusive type of law. I saw being a general practitioner as really the best service I could give to the people that I knew, and not getting bored, having the variety. Yeah.
That is the key, right? Yeah. You never know what
That's
your day
right.
is going to be
but
like.
But you've got to generate your business, and you've got to market yourself, and you have to figure out how to bring in the clients. You're not just doing the legal work. So you really, that type of aspect of how do you get in the business, and then the actual doing of the business. And that's something that was complicated that nobody unpacks in law school. That's not what you learn to do. There are services that help you, but that's, to me, what a small business owner is trying to do for themselves is they're wanting to do the topic of their business, but meanwhile, you have to understand, again, the complexity of how do you start it, how do you run it, how do you stay in compliance with all laws. It's a lot.
It's such a unique skill set to be able to wear both of those hats, do your day job and all of the business operations of having your own business. Did you have anyone that was your mentor to help, or did you just learn along the way?
I learned along the way.
Yeah.
I eventually made some connections and took my book of business to a firm, and but it was still just not really the way to go for me. I liked being able to be in charge of what I was doing, particularly again at that point to have the variety of legal topics that I wanted to work in.
So, and as the first woman to hold the office of Seattle City Attorney, how have you put your stamp on that position? And I'm always a little hesitant to use the first female in that.
I am too, Beth.
It gets
Thank
tiring.
You. It is. I have a son and a daughter, and I want both of them to know they have a place in the world in their future.
Right.
And I look at it at that. So when I do say I'm the first woman to serve in that role, the next sentence I say is, and I have a son and a daughter.
Right.
And so I then next say I'm the 10th city attorney. So that tells people historically, not a lot of people have even served in this role. So chances are that I am the first of something because we've not had a lot of variety in that role.
Yeah.
But it's important to note and then move on, right, as being that, because the more, at least what I would learn from my kids is the more you highlight some characteristic, if they're not that, they internalize, well, that means I must not be enough. I must not measure up to that. And so all of this focus on characteristics that we've had in culture, to me, all that says is you have just told all those people that don't match that they are somehow less valuable or have less to contribute. And because that's what kiddos hear. I'm not that, so that must mean I'm not enough.
Right.
And that is absolutely not the message I want to hear. So I take that with me as I think I lead in a different way. I think women just lead in a different way. Obviously, individuals do, but I take it. I'm honored to serve in that role. I never was seeking out to be the first of anything at any type of a situation, but certainly acknowledge that it's a mark that has happened, and then move on, get the work done.
So. Tell me about what motivated you to step into that role. Certainly at the time that you did, I mean, it's an enormous job to begin with, and I think it really takes very special people to be civil servants, public servants, and give their life to what is such important work. So first of all, thank you for that. But so what was your motivation? What prompted you to step into that role?
It is a complicated story about it, and I really do appreciate when I'm asked that question, because it helps me go back to that moment and to carry that forward and not lose sight of it. I never thought of myself as someone who would seek public office or be a public servant in a very public way. I saw myself as someone who served, but that's in the background, and whether people knew about it or not was not an important thing. My decision to run for this office specifically was not personally convenient or comfortable. I decided it the day before the filing deadline closed, at the deathbed of my birth mother. I was adopted, and my adoptive mom was in ICU, and my birth mother had just passed away. So it was not a very easy, it didn't make a lot of sense. People were like, what in the, don't do that. But to me, the things that were so obviously important in the city that I couldn't answer questions to my kids about what was happening, this was the impact seat. This role specifically, you didn't have to change everything, but one change. You just take one piece of furniture, for example, you move it in the room, you've changed the traffic pattern.
Right.
Everything else has to change, even if it stays in the same place. It has to form and function in a different way. So I just really couldn't live with myself if I didn't do it, despite it being not very comfortable or convenient, all those things.
Right. Well, I think that idea of moving one piece of furniture it's so much more accessible and manageable, because there's a lot of opportunities that just feel daunting and overwhelming to someone to take on. But I think that's really a valuable way to approach it. Talk to us about your leadership principles that you live by, and is there any one principle that is your North Star?
When I kind of thought that would be a question you asked, I thought, boy, I'm not somebody who's studied leadership or read books, and there's a lot out there that has a lot to provide, which maybe I need to start reading, because a lot of people have a lot of insight on it. To me, it's more of it's two parts. One, I didn't hear from leaders what I wanted to hear or see leaders doing and connecting on topics the way that I wanted to hear. So I want to try to be the leader that I wish there had been, so I wouldn't have had to come do these things, right? It's kind of one thing. But really it is about servant leadership and like putting the last first and the first last. And that really is kind of the way I think we will get things done, not by telling people what to do. Nobody really likes to be told what to do, but people like to be invited or inspired. And if I can do those one of those two ways of getting people to understand the goal I'm trying to get to and why it's important, and then empowering them to do that, I think that's the best way we can get results and people feel excited about the goal we're trying to get to.
So you said you haven't studied leadership, and I completely respect that. I think it's also, for some people, it's just inherent in who they are, and or it evolves over time. Do you feel that, like, what applies to you? Has that been an evolution? Do you see yourself as that leader that when you look at other people that you identify as leaders? Was there a moment?
I struggle with that question of thinking that some people just inherently have it and some don't, because I don't think I would have said I inherently had it. Like I wasn't the one that was always the captain of my soccer team, or I didn't seek out being class president or any of these things. I was a pale, freckled redhead in Texas, and I would blush, or I'd be like all red-faced playing soccer. They'd pull me out thinking I was, going to pass out from heat stroke or something. So I would blend in and try to not be noticed. But I think at some point, your conviction and your gut just won't stop talking to you about what you see as lacking, and there's a vacuum. And I started to ask myself, nobody's going into that obvious vacuum, so why couldn't I do that? And I spoke at my father's funeral, and I had a lot of people come up to me after I spoke, and I thought, well, they're just saying nice compliments, because what else are you going to say? But I really had people after the fact say things to me about how I spoke at his service. And I thought, really? Like, I wouldn't, even at that time I was even a lawyer. I'm like, I'm not somebody I wasn't a litigator, I was an advisor, transactional lawyer. It wasn't something I thought about, but now it's one of my favorite things to do. So yes, it evolved, and that's why I say, don't count yourself out that you don't see yourself, that's not, because sometimes when people naturally go to those spaces, maybe they're not actually slowing down to be like, is this the time I should be filling that vacuum? Because you need to take a breath, because really the person with the best skills for the problem should be the one to step up. And it's not always going to be the same person. So sometimes people want to be a leader and they seek it out, but I would invite people to take a breath and like check. And are you the one with the stuff and nobody's going in? Then you need to go in.
Step right in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, your story about your father's service. I had a very similar occurrence. My father had passed away unexpectedly. I was only 25, and I was the fourth of 5 siblings. There were 5 of us, and as we were talking with the pastor, and he's asking all the questions around what do you want for your father's service, my siblings kept turning to me and saying, Beth, what do you think? Beth, what should we do? And I was looking around like, why are you asking?
Me?
Why is it me? But of course there was so much emotion, and everyone's handling it their own way, and so I said, I need to step up.
Yes.
I just need to be the leader here. But that was a real pivotal moment for me, that realizing how other people saw me, even though I didn't necessarily in that moment think, well, I'm a leader.
Yes.
But it was how other people perceived me. So I think that embracing that along the way, even when you're thinking, no, I am not that person. But sometimes that goes back to that reflection, self-reflection about
And
that.
I think as women, particularly noticing it and not swallowing it, because we often maybe wait for someone to tap us on the shoulder to say, hey, you'd probably be good at that. And I had a lot of men who did help along the way, but really in the end, it was myself that did that. And just like you realize, like, that's me. This is my time, and I'm not doing it out of arrogance. I'm doing it because I'm the person suited for the situation. And if I let that go by, I'm letting myself down and everybody around me down. So. Right,
exactly. And the fact that we do evolve, we do need to change. How do you give yourself space to change and grow? Especially, you're a mom, you have a busy job. There's a lot of things that can fill up our day.
Well, I grew up playing soccer, then became a distance runner, and you kind of have to keep going, right? And then I became a CrossFitter later in life, and that really has been a kind of a really important thing for me, because the whole purpose of those kind of workouts is to not get comfortable. You're not supposed to, like as a distance runner, you're supposed to settle into your pace and just kind of maintain it. And in those things, it's intentional to not ever let you get settled into it. You have to move to the next thing, and you got to move to the next thing. And I have found that has been the biggest grit builder and tenacity builder for me, just personally, and then to be able to transfer that over into these types of spaces of being prepared to answer what is called for that day, but never assuming that my strategy is going to just go the way I've controlled it and laid it out. You have to always expect there to be something to disrupt it.
That's so interesting about CrossFit, because I think learning to be comfortable with
the
discomfort is such an interesting growth opportunity for anyone.
And it's constant.
It's constant.
That's like my teabag thing said the other day, the only constant is change. And I was like, I ripped it off and I set it on my desk, and I was like, yes, that's right.
Yes.
Right, because as humans, our brains want to go to what we know. It's more comfortable.
What's familiar.
What we know, it's less work. And so we constantly will go to what's slightly less work. So I'm always fighting that off of like, well, why should I bother doing a little bit extra work? Well, because maybe you get a lot out of it, personal growth. Maybe you get a lot out of it because you change a system, right? You get a lot out of it if you fend off the why should I bother, and that's always, I feel like, gravity falling on us. Why bother? And you just have to always bother, right?
You have to always bother. And I think that it goes back to also having appreciation for what you truly are capable of. You know, if we're staying in the familiar and the comfortable,
Yes.
then that's what we're capable of in the moment until we push ourselves.
If you look at what you're already good at, your growth is like infinitesimal.
Yes.
If you do, I don't really speak like this on the regular, but if you do what you suck at, you're going to see growth.
It's so true.
And
It's exactly
and that's
right.
what we miss as adults is
Right.
that growth.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I always say, go to what you suck at, and then you'll feel like I'm accomplishing a lot. Right.
I love that. That's exactly the advice that I was given by my first mentor when my first job was at Seafair, my first job where I was really getting a regular paycheck, and I was definitely resisting. You know, I thought, okay, I'm a PR person. I'm going to just stay in that lane. And he wanted us to become event producers, all of us there, and do all of the roles in event production. And I resisted that. And he said, it's only scary because you haven't done it.
Yes.
As soon as you do it, then it becomes easy, which isn't always true. It's not always easy, but it does become easier.
Right.
And I really do think that foundation of learning to do operations and logistics, as well as selling sponsorship and all of the elements that come with producing an event, that is what laid the groundwork for me being a CEO in the future, because I could at least understand all those different roles, even if I wasn't an expert at them, which I think also contributes to good leadership.
You borrowed his belief that you could do it. It's
Right.
like my first CrossFit coach, I'd have the barbell and he'd be like, and you need to put 5s on the end of that barbell. I'd be like, no way. But why does he think I can lift it, right?
Yeah.
And if you couldn't think you could yourself, right, maybe someone telling you that helps.
They have that belief, right? So being a politician is a very specific kind of career.
And maybe not the most awesome word. I'm trying to make it be a positive word now.
Right, right. Well, and I do think that there are so many things that you can learn from being in a political role. What have been some of your life lessons or things that you have taken from this particular job in your career?
That's a really fascinating question. I think pausing and understanding where somebody is in the process that I'm trying to build towards. Not everybody is right in my corner, and literally in the office, understanding, oh, this, and this happened, therefore I'm at step 4. So now you understand what 5 and 6 are going to be. Meanwhile, the people that are, maybe in another division in my office or constituents that I'm out at a community group, they had no idea that steps 1, 2, and 3 already happened. We're at 4, I'm planning 5 and 6. So making sure people come along with where we are, right? And so that they're not caught off guard. That's been a really important thing to remember. Where are they in the process on this topic? Are they nowhere near familiar with it, right? And I need to back it up and makes it accessible, right? Or did they just miss that we already had that covered and now we're on to the next one? Keeping people, again, connected to the mission and the timing of the mission is super important, because otherwise they don't feel their role is significant. They don't understand why they're doing what they're doing because they didn't see the things that happened before, or they haven't been informed of where we're headed. That disconnection as a leader is on me, and I need to see it at a big picture. I can't tell everybody, but I need to make sure that people go and tell everybody, so that eventually it's all understood to the best that we can.
Right.
Can't control it all, and not everybody's going to agree with it, but at least I've attempted to communicate it in multiple ways that people learn. Not always orally, not always in writing, right? But people learn in different ways.
Right.
To at least do my best to communicate that, where we are in the goal, and reflecting that, whether it be data, right, or the message of what we're trying to do with this project, things like that.
I think one of the hard things in my mind about being in a public servant role is when you know that you are doing work that you may not see the results of. Talk to me about that process for you, and are you able to stay in the moment knowing that there could be something that is being a change is being affected down the line, or do you need to see that accomplishment, which I think most of us we're built that way.
Yeah, we are taught that way through our education system
right.
here. It's a really fascinating spot to be the only elected city attorney in the state of Washington, and there's not very many elected city attorneys across the country. Most are appointed by mayors and city council. Again, that's why it's like super important to go. I'm not only the first woman, but that fact most people don't even know. And so when you think about it like that, I'm not just a public servant, but I'm also a lawyer in a public servant role, and so I don't pick my client like I did in private practice.
Right.
I can't fire my client like I can in private practice, right? Or vice versa, right? That's how that is in the private sector. So there's then, areas that I can't speak about because of my role as a lawyer, even though I'm elected. I guess I could try to skirt it, but I'm not that type of a person. So there's going to be not only some things that are long-term, they may not be seen. There may be things that happen that nobody will ever know whether I was involved or not involved, right?
Right.
Because of the role as a lawyer. So I knew coming into this type of a role, even as a politician, there's a lot of politicians that are what I call credit coveters, and they look for those opportunities to show, because you got to have a deliverable to your public that you do.
Right.
I have to be comfortable that I am committed to the process and I know the end goals of what I'm trying to achieve, but then to also let go of that. And as long as we get there, it really is not relevant or superfluous. It's superfluous for me as to whether or not I'm associated with those things moving forward. In the end, at the end of my time, whatever that is, looking back in this role, I don't have to be known for doing this thing and this thing. Hopefully there's things that people know I did, but everything I'm doing doesn't have to be associated with me. And if I fought for that, I think that's the wrong way of being a politician. Because if we're all doing that, I think the public's going to be pretty tired of it, right? I think maybe that's what we're experiencing.
They will grow weary.
It's enough, right? Like you can get stuff done and you don't need to have all the accolades all the time.
Right.
It's just your job to do it.
Right. Or it's just the right thing to do.
It's just the right thing to do.
Right.
And even if nobody sees it, it's the right thing to do. And for me to be able to sleep at night and wake up the next morning, look myself in the mirror, that's what I believe is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So a lot of what people who are game changers, leaders, they have to disrupt the space and go against the grain. What are some of the areas that you have visions for disrupting? Like, what do you hope to disrupt in the future?
Well, one we just talked about, which is, when you use the word politician, sometimes I apologize or I say, I hope I'm not like a politician. And we used to, if you recall, a few years ago, there was a lot of not liking people who served in an occupation of law enforcement. And we're trending to get away from that. We clearly want reform work, but we want there also to be people willing to serve in that. We see we need it. Like I said, we need prosecutors and criminal defense. We need people to go to law school and choose to serve in that role so that our criminal justice system can function, because we need lawyers to serve as judges, criminal defense, and prosecutors. It has to happen, or that system won't be there for all of us and for crime victims. Because it is right that game changers are disrupting. And that sounds like such a negative term. I keep wanting to try to, is it erupting? Like I'm trying to give it a positive spin, so it's not. But I think what I'm trying to do with changing politics is to change the way the general public thinks about politics. Right. That is super esoteric maybe, but I would like government to be boring to a certain extent. I would like
with less drama.
Less drama. I would like people of integrity and ethics to not think I should not go there, right? I wanted to do crisis relief work and work with refugees specifically in my 20s, and to go into places where everybody else who could financially or physically get out already had, but there still were people left.
Sure.
And in a way, my entering politics was that type of a space where nobody in their right mind would go into it, right? As you said, nobody would go into that. I'd like to disrupt that notion that it is not noble to serve in this way, that it doesn't have to be the way that we have seen of late. It can be a different way of leading in politics, because it really is a way to blend together social sectors to move problems along. And if there's more people who will do it with integrity, that won't be a credit coveter, that will just share in are we getting towards the goal of moving and improving this, maybe not solving it, but at least improving this problem so we can get to the next line of problems we've got. I hope to invite people to that. So it's kind of a larger picture. It's not a specific topic, but I think it was one that we desperately need in America.
There's no question about that. And I think that, getting more individuals into politics who come at it from that integrity standpoint and just wanting to make our world better, as opposed to the credit, or having power and influence, fame, all of that. So thank you.
Go to Hollywood if you want fame, right? That's what I say.
Exactly. Yeah. So throughout your career, of course, who hasn't had challenges? No one. Tell us about a challenge that you had throughout at some point in your career, how you managed it, and was there anyone that supported you or that was critical in how you got through that challenge?
I mean, I did think about who offered me jobs, and it was curious. I'd never asked myself those questions. It was all men had offered me all my positions that I'd had. And I go back to I don't like those distinctions, but it was notable to me to think about that. And as we think about your topic of game changers, right, I know that one thing you like to think about is like the pushback piece, right? And there are a lot of naysayers around, but there were some people that, like we talked earlier, that you're a person at Seafair, that believed you had the capacity. And not everybody thinks like that. Not everybody looks for talent, so to speak, because if it's not relevant to them, I do think we all walk around kind of self-referencing. So if they don't see it serving themselves, they may not encourage somebody to do that growth because how does it help them in that moment? But I think that I had enough people along the way. When I wanted to move out this way, for example, the leader of the sports representation agency just picked up the phone, called his former client, Wally Walker, just made this connection for me because I had no basketball knowledge, right? But that connection to move from DC to come out here, somebody just picked up a phone. Did he need to do it? No. He was notorious, kind of a curmudgeon-y, scary person. But for some reason, he wanted to extend that little bit of help, a phone call, right? Yeah. And that made a difference because that gave me 6 years of working at the Sonics, right? And then that led to me going to law school, and then that those little moments where someone chooses to do something helpful, and that was a selfless act. Right. That there was nothing that his business was going to get from that. So
well, it points you to an open door that you may have not have recognized otherwise.
I certainly wouldn't have had access to. Otherwise. Yeah.
Right. So great segue to the bring it back to the Sonics. So we are all, of course,
we're all in on getting the Sonics back.
On getting those Sonics back, and I think most people are aware that we're just waiting for the NBA commissioner to say it is time to begin the draft process or the expansion process. Are you, as someone involved with the city of Seattle, are you part of those conversations? Do you have any? Are you talking to the mayor at all about this?
Well, I had my phone under here that was a direct to Commissioner to see if we had any notices.
Yeah, where's the bat phone?
That's right, the bat phone. Obviously, some things I can't speak on, and some things I can, but I clearly make it known that is something I think the city really needs. We are a town that can support many professional franchises. It's really exciting to be one of those towns that can, that we have people who really will come from all corners of the region to do that. And I just see it as a piece of our civic history. It's so important. I worked at what was last called the Furtado Center, which was the practice facility named after the long-serving athletic trainer Frank Furtado.
Right.
And what an honor to, the Gates Foundation sits there now, but what an honor to have been able to experience that. And there's just generations of kiddos that have not had access to seeing that. It's awesome we have the Storm. But again, we want to be able to highlight for every kid, right? We don't want to not be highlighting for the boys here in Seattle because they need to know they also could have a space to do it. So it really is a significant piece, and I think the again, having the variety of vehicles to send out that the culture of sports, and that the universality that sports provides. When you go, I played soccer, like I said, growing up in Texas. I played it when I was a law student in Germany. I played it with my students in Thailand. Like, that universality of sport is wonderful and beautiful, and we should celebrate every sport we can here in the city to do that too.
That's the piece that I think I'm so enamored with about bringing the Sonics back, is not only our love for basketball, but how that can be infused into the community for our kids, and the the youth sports aspect of it. There's just simply not enough access for so many kids, and for the most part, basketball is fairly accessible. You need a hoop and a ball.
It's pretty easy, yeah.
So to me, that's an exciting opportunity going forward. And I think that when we go to like the Rain City Showcase at Climate Pledge Arena and see these exhibition games, you are reminded of the strong passion in this community. And there is, it's been over 16 years.
I know. And look at all the Sonics paraphernalia. Everywhere.
Nobody has forgotten it. So.
Nobody. And my kids' generations, right, like they're young teenagers, their friends all buy all the Sonics gear. And they're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And to be able to deliver that for them and to say, like, this is a place, because of its enclosure, right, like in that arena to watch basketball and the pace that it goes, it is so exciting. The city was so electric when we had won the Western Conference Finals in '96, and we were going to go play, Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. This town was electric, and it is with any of those big sports things. But to have the obvious, again, the vacuum we talked about earlier of basketball, professional basketball, the NBA, is significant, and it should not go for much longer.
No, and I'm knocking on wood here. I think that it's been encouraging to know how many different individuals and entities that are all working toward the same goal. And we know that we cannot get ahead of the commissioner, and we'll just keep building the momentum here in our community, and also be at the ready.
It's
when
it.
He says, yes, let's go.
That's it. Another phrase I use is having patient muscles, right? We work out other kinds of muscles, the adaptation ones we talked about earlier, but patient ones, right? To not get ahead of things, but to be prepared, ready to go when the time comes.
So, and we always end our podcast with a couple of game changer questions. These are not trick questions. Is there someone who was a game changer in your life who you just really admired, or who you had some serious takeaways from their ability to change the game?
Well, I think the first one I'd have to always say my adopted mom and dad, right? Because they chose to take me in. I was a total stranger. I was an infant, but still, people who serve in those roles to like literally take in a stranger, they changed the trajectory of my life. Otherwise, I would have had a 19-year-old as a mom, and and it would have been a totally different life, right? As with any of us born, but. The story that you have, the access to things, the lessons you learned, the servants that my parents were, they would not have probably been very comfortable with me being in politics. I'll just say it, if they because they were not limelight people.
Right.
So it's a significant piece to do that in public, but to come with the humility that I think we're supposed to have when we come there. And then, oddly, I'm not going to give you a name, but I'm going to say the naysayers, the people.
Interesting.
The people, not a lot of them, but the ones I can literally remember, them just not bothering to give me the time of day because they didn't think I was really anything consequential.
Right.
The people that were like, someone who met me at a coffee shop, I was asking their advice, and they didn't even order a coffee. You're kind of like, huh.
Oh, interesting.
These people will stay with me a little bit because why should I value their judgment of my capacity of what I have to contribute? They don't know what I'm capable of more than I know I'm capable of. I know where my mental grit, like pain cave, is at its limits. They don't know it. And I'm going to say thanks for that opportunity, and I'm going to run with it.
Right.
Right, and look around at the people that do believe in me if I need some support that way. But you naysayers who thought that maybe I couldn't do something, I'm not going to value your opinion more than mine.
Right. Well, that's another great segue to my next question, because when you're changing the game, it is disruptive at its core, and when you are swimming upstream and getting all that pushback, do you have techniques or those coping techniques, or what helps you to stay grounded against the pushback? Do you have any guidance that you would give someone who is in that position?
Well, I feel like I have a lot, because I try to make sure that, like we said earlier, that never seeps in for very long. I mean, it's going to come in. You have to give yourself a lot of grace, but I use a treadmill, and I find a spot on the wall, and I stare it down, and I don't literally let anything in the periphery of my vision alter where I'm staring. That's a really weird description maybe to some people. You could do it going on a walk. You could even do it sitting. If you're mobility impaired, you can even do it sitting. You don't have to be moving like I'm saying, but I make it where I'm having to function but keep my focus, because just the term having laser focus, I don't know, doesn't really communicate to me. But when I do that, and I don't let the cars that are driving in front of the window or the people walking by, even for a second, right, then I'm thinking about my goal of what I'm trying to accomplish with something at work. I don't let the shiny distractions or the disruptions or the flaming arrows that are coming at me to try to get me off that goal. They don't divert my attention, because they don't divert my vision, they don't divert my eyesight, they don't divert me physically, so I'm not going to let it divert me mentally. I've used that kind of since law school, and it's a really important thing. That and burpees. You got to get up. You got to get up. You got to know you can get up. Those are really my two things, because if I can do those, again, I just take a lot from my sports background and using the physicality, even as I age, to keep that belief. Even if I'm trying to stay on the plateau, right, I'm not trying to get any better, I want to maintain. And those, being able to transfer the physical beliefs that I can stay focused on the goal and not get distracted, then I believe I can transfer that into an intangible social topic that I think I need to influence in a specific way, in a balanced, specific way.
I love that. That just the idea of that focus and really putting blinders on to the naysayers.
Not know that they're not there.
Right.
I mean, you don't ignore, because then you become, for me, an inaccessible politician.
Right.
That is absolutely what I don't want. You have to stay connected and know what's going on, but it is not something that's deserving of to divert my attention.
Right. That's a great distinction. Yeah. And this has been awesome.
What a fantastic thing you have generated. I'm excited to watch your episodes, because I think that your connection with the topic is so inspiring. This is not in your planned thing, but I just want to compliment you so much, because making me even think through how did I use sports and continue to do it as I age, right? Because I'm not going to be a pro athlete right now. I mean, maybe archery, I guess, or something, but I don't know much about it. But I'm just saying that so important, and that people, regardless of their access or ability in sports, they might be a spectator, right? That you can get the analogies and you can transfer it into leadership, and leadership doesn't have to be big. Leadership can be in a small group. It can be purposeful, like you mentioned, with your family. I just think it's really exciting. It's a great blend of topics, and it was a thrill to come. So thank you for having me.
Oh, and such an honor for me to get to meet so many incredible people who are really doing amazing things in the world, and it's an honor to get to showcase that. So thank you again for joining me. Thanks for joining us for our launch season of We the Game Changers. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your content. And please share this with your network. Encourage someone else to explore their leadership journey and get inspired by game changers of every kind. This season, we'll be talking with executive chefs, professional athletes, founders, and more, each with their own unique leadership voices. From confident public speakers to introverted role models. Wherever you are in your leadership journey, all are welcome. Follow along on Seattle Sports Commission's social media and join us for our next episode.